Hey everybody, welcome to episode 3 of Getting Deep with a PhD and JD. I'm Kimmie. I am the JD of this duo. I work in the continuing education space for lawyers as well as accountants. And I also own my own law practice, and I focus on estate planning.
And I am Nicki. I am the PhD of this duo, and I teach in an urban university. And the courses that I teach research and I teach human behavior. So you must be wondering, what is this podcast all about? Well, this podcast is a spirited and analytical discussion about relevant news topics that are not a part of your daily timeline. Not only will you learn something new, you will be inspired to action. So, Kimmie, here is a question for you. What industry has made, and I'm going to use this term as our parents, the Creole folks would say, has made goo-gobs of money and may have to pay back goo-gobs of money?
So, it's the chemical hair straightening industry. Yes, and so this topic is top of mind because of the recent legal actions that have occurred in the industry. There are a great deal of lawsuits that have been filed against various manufacturers of chemical hair relaxers. And hair relaxers are a product that we use mainly in the Black community to straighten these curls out permanently. Right? So they have, and Nicki, you and I have talked about how, we've always had an idea that, these chemical straighteners probably aren't good for us.
Right.
I think we've known that for a while. But I think now the catalyst is that there's actual sufficient scientific evidence to meet legal burdens, as well as medical, I would imagine, to connect instances of uterine cancer. These are the cancers that I've researched that, some of these lawsuits are focused on. Uterine cancer, endometrial cancer, and ovarian cancer.
And on also the disproportionate amount of fibroids that are found within Black women. So that's also a part that we found. And, the interesting thing is that when I started researching for this episode, I was able to find actual studies that were conducted way back in the 90s, the early and late 90s. And so one of my thoughts was, wow, we had some information out there, but I think right now the information, like we've had more research conducted, because people have known for a while that relaxers were toxic and were harmful to Black women, and to, I should say, Black persons, because men, there are also men who have, had their hair straightened or texturized. The texturizer is the milder form, or it's the same. Yes, it's. But what I found out? I was going to say incorrectly that it was a milder form of relaxer, but it's not. It's actually a relaxer that is only held on your hair for a short time, so that, because the way the relaxer works is it breaks down the hair bonds. And so the longer you leave it on, the more the bonds are broken. So with the texturizer, they leave it on a short time, so it doesn't really
break it all away.
Break down the curl, but it just makes it
looser,
as people would say. It makes it easier to work with. So
it makes you look like you got good hair.
good hair. You got some, as people would say, you got something up in you. You got some white or some Indian up in you.
Exactly. What you got in you, girl?
But you got up in
Yeah.
you. And you all know we love humor. We love humor.
So, we talked about, based on what you were just saying, that we've kind of known about this for a while. So, when you say we've known, was it more of a theory back then, or was it actually scientifically, there was a scientific, a significant scientific connection between the relaxer and the, resultant, diseases that they are focusing on now? Was it that?
Well, I think that we had studies. So they actually looked at some of the chemicals in
Mm-hmm.
relaxers, and they were able to say, okay, so these are some chemicals. And when we look at, for example, animal studies, and I'm vegetarian and
Mm-hmm.
I try to eat vegan, and I'm really nervous about animal studies. But
Mm-hmm.
when we look at animal studies, we know that these chemicals they cause a certain thing to happen with
Mm-hmm.
animals. And so people knew, but it wasn't until we had additional
Right.
research. Um, and honestly, I really feel like when you think about where we are now with the natural hair
Mm-hmm.
movement, I think with the natural hair movement, and there are more people who are saying, okay, I'm enjoying my natural hair. And so it's almost like it's less like we needed a time when there were more people that were willing to say, I'm not going to use a relaxer
Yeah.
in order for this information to really become
More
front and
important,
center.
exactly.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah. So I
that
really,
you and I were talking about is, okay, well, why
yeah.
now? And I definitely think it is because of that natural hair movement. For some of you who may not know, I mean, there really was a period of time, there has been a period of time where a substantial number of Black women have intentionally decided that, hey, I am going to learn to love what grows out of my head naturally, and I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to learn how to maintain it and how to manage it. And so I think that is what has really brought this to the forefront. Um, and in addition to that, scientific connection, because something has to happen where it triggers and it says, hey. And so what I found, one of the law firms that's actually, one of, because there, so let me sort of break it down. So there have been, and I am in no way an expert on class action.
Mm-hmm.
Litigation is its own beast, right? And so
Right.
so essentially there has been a substantial number of lawsuits filed. And I'm trying to see if did I keep that? I don't think I wrote that down. Well, there were several hundred. I think there's maybe like maybe 100 and something lawsuits that have been filed, right? And so whenever there are similar lawsuits or lawsuits with the same defendant or similar
Mm-hmm.
defendants, they begin to work to combine those lawsuits, so you're not bogging down various systems with basically the same lawsuit, or the
Right.
same
Right.
defendants in this jurisdiction, that jurisdiction, that jurisdiction. So they characterize it as multi-district litigation, right? And so I think that's part of
Right.
the process of maintaining or creating a class action. And so there's been several hundreds of them, and it looks like there are several different law firms currently involved in these various
Mm-hmm.
lawsuits that have individually been filed, right? And so some of the common, context that's provided is that in October of 2022 is when the National Institute of Environmental Health published findings in the Journal of National
Right.
Cancer Institute, warning that the ingredients in popular hair relaxers can cause the uterine cancer due to their endocrine disrupting and
Disrupting. Yeah.
carcinogenic
Chemicals.
chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
Say
Yeah.
that.
I know. Endocrine
Mm-hmm.
disrupting carcinogenic
Yes.
chemicals.
Good job, Nikki, with PhD. So, yeah, so I mean, so that was sort of that catalyst, right? That's what those are the kinds of things that you need to at least establish a legal cause of action against someone. And so the common folks that are being sued are L'Oreal. They produce Dark and Lovely. They named
Mm-hmm.
as defendants. This
Those are some pretty big, like Dark and Lovely, pretty big
mm-hmm.
relaxer
Soft
industry.
Strength of Nature, and Namaste. And Namaste, I had to look up Namaste because I was like, oh, I don't know who they are, but they are the company behind Organic Root Stimulator. Yeah.
Okay, okay. I remember that name is very familiar.
Mm-hmm.
Organic Root
Mm-hmm.
Stimulator.
ORS
Yeah.
is what you know.
Yep.
So those are.
And L'Oreal and all of
Mm-hmm.
those. Yeah, those are all
And so
familiar.
you and I talked about, okay, so what does this mean? Like, you started with the goo gobs, right? Goo gobs of
Yep.
money was earned.
Goo gobs
And
of
goo
money.
gobs of money have been earned by definitely the majority of the goo gobs have been earned by these manufacturers. Then you and I kind
Right.
of talked
Right.
about some sort of nuances, which is, what about the people who use the relaxers? They
Right.
are,
Right.
are they a part of this reparations? And that's what we're calling this episode.
Yeah, like the stylists who are actually using the
Mm-hmm.
relaxers and applying the relaxers. But what's interesting, Kimmy? I think it's important to mention that the people who are applying the relaxers on hair are also people who are at
Yes.
risk. Because if we're talking about women getting relaxers, you get a relaxer every few months or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But these are folks who are working 24/7 or have worked 24/7, putting in this using this toxic chemicals and putting them in
And
hair.
breathing it in.
And so, yes, and breathing it in. And so they have been impacted by
Mm-hmm.
this. And so and it's interesting to me because when we talk about the hair manufacturers, what percentage of these manufacturers are we talking about who are, first of all, people of color or identify as Black?
Mm-hmm.
Because there are a lot of relaxer manufacturers who do not identify as
Oh yeah.
Black.
Yeah.
So kind of trying to figure out
Most of them, I would
who.
imagine most of the companies that manufacture relaxers aren't Black owned. They may look like it
Right.
because they're marketing to communities.
Yes.
Right?
And they're using the language
Mm-hmm.
and the images to try to make us think.
Absolutely.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also important for us to mention, and this is a little tidbit about how, like, one of the industries where, in particular, Black women were able to um, thrive in the whole hairstyling
Mm-hmm.
business and straightening the
Mm-hmm.
hair. So even taking it back to having straightened hair, that was the industry where Black women were involved. They could have their own
Mm-hmm.
businesses by straightening hair and then moving into hair relaxers
Mm-hmm.
once relaxers were used and they were commercially
Mm-hmm.
available. And so on one hand, we see that stylists and Black folks were making
Mm-hmm.
money, having their own businesses,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, how many, our
Mm-hmm.
moms had a business of
Mm-hmm.
hair,
And
doing
you told
hair.
me that was news to me. I didn't know that.
Yes. Yes. My mom would talk about how the girls, because they had a lot of children in the household, but they had 7 girls that were,
Mm-hmm.
working and doing hair and
Mm-hmm.
everything, which is why our moms knew how to do hair so
Yeah, they
well.
matched that straightening
Uh,
comb.
they knew how to do it. But then those were also the folks now that we're looking at. It was a Black woman who put the toxic chemicals in my
Mm-hmm.
hair. So that is an interesting,
It's nuanced. And so
it's
I want to
nuanced. It's
press
really
that nuance
nuanced.
because I think it's a good question, and I think it's a question that can be handled very quickly. Because I think that beauticians who use chemical relaxers are just as, and you mentioned that they could be considered victims of, you know victims of whatever may come from inhaling those fumes and things like that, right?
Right.
But I am of the position that, as a beautician, from a legal standpoint, what you have to show is that, okay, this person either actually knew or should have
Mm.
known, right? That
Mm-hmm.
this was a chemical that could cause this kind of health reaction or injury,
Right.
right?
Right.
So when you're looking at a beautician, I would say that they shouldn't know, because when you look at the manufacturer, they're the ones who are employing the scientists, the chemists,
Right. Right.
to
You're right
create
about
this
that.
product.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they should have known, because they've employed these chemists and scientists. I'm pretty sure
Mm-hmm.
when they were putting these chemicals together, they know what these chemicals are, right? Because
Right.
you're held to this higher standard because of your education and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Beauticians are taught how to do hair, right? How to correctly apply it based on what?
Right.
The manufacturer's instructions.
The manufacturer's
Mm-hmm.
done all of this,
Yeah.
what is it called, R&D
Mm-hmm.
research, with the research. uh Also, I think that, so there's the financial piece, with like, okay, who's
Mm-hmm.
liable in terms of that, but I also think that we have to think about the social
Mm-hmm.
pieces, because I know when I was getting my relaxer, the person who did my hair, uh, when I talked about, okay, I'm really thinking about like not doing a relaxer anymore and going
Mm-hmm.
natural, um, she was she said, "Oh, well, what would you do with your hair?" So it there was kind of, and she never said to me, "Don't do it," but there were all of these social
Mm-hmm.
cues that maybe showing your natural hair would not be the best
Mm-hmm.
thing,
Oh,
you
we
know
did all of
and I don't blame folks. I think that we all live in a society that really tells us as
Mm-hmm.
women, tells us as Black women, that we're not good
Yeah.
enough. And
We've been
so
into
um
that idea that what
yeah.
naturally grows out of our head is not presentable, um, it's not
Right.
desirable,
Right.
and
Right.
it's hard to manage. And the only reason why it's hard to manage is because we haven't put in the time, effort, and research to determine how we should be handling our curls and our kinks, and that's
And
why.
even I'm thinking about, even when I stopped relaxing my hair. First of all, I'm very fortunate in that my mom really did not want me to get my hair
Mm-hmm.
relaxed. My mom, um, held off as long as she
I
could.
do. Mm-hmm.
And then I got my hair relaxed. And then, so I did have a time where I did relax my hair. But then when I said I wasn't going to relax my hair, I was able to not have my hair
Yeah.
relaxed. So I'm very fortunate in that. Um, but like I said, there are all these social norms and different things about how my hair should
Mm-hmm.
look, and even in society, when I first stopped relaxing my hair, there weren't folks out there that had natural hair
I
channels. I
remember.
mean, it was before the age of YouTube, and
Mm-hmm.
before
I remember.
before all the
Yeah.
TikToks,
Mm-hmm.
or TikTokers, I should
Mm-hmm.
say. But so I had to really figure out what to do. And you know what I
Mm.
noticed? I didn't even know what my natural hair texture felt
Right.
like. I couldn't even
Mm-hmm.
remember, because my mother kept telling me, when I said, okay, I'm going to let my hair grow, I'm gonna just let it grow, I'm not going to have the relaxer. And my mom said, oh, this is how your hair is. And she started describing it. And I said, I don't remember
Mm-hmm.
that.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I do remember, I mean, as a child, I was in my hair, I touched my
Mm-hmm.
hair, but as an adult, when I was thinking about this, I really didn't have a conscious understanding of the type of hair
Mm-hmm.
that I had. So it was almost like dating my
Yeah.
hair.
Yeah.
I had to date it. I had to woo it. I had to finesse it before
Exactly.
I could get into a relationship. And now I have a love
Yeah.
relationship with
Yeah.
it. But
That.
I had to really get to
Mm-hmm.
know it,
And even now, and we've talked about this at length, in that. So, you inspired me to go natural. You went, yeah,
Oh.
you went natural before I did. And when I saw that you went natural, so that inspired me. And then this is the other thing. So I remember I had been getting a relaxer. Same with you. My mom did not want me to get a relaxer, and she held out as long as she could, right? And so I eventually got
Mm-hmm.
a relaxer
Mm-hmm.
in high school. And I relaxed until my 20s, right? And I remember you going natural, and then I remember uh, going to this beautician one time, right? Not my current beautician or the one that I've been going to for a long time. This was when I was still trying to find one here where I am. And so I went to this one lady, and I remember going into her salon, and she was like, "Oh, you're waiting too long to get your relaxer." And I was like, "Oh," she was like, "Yeah, you come in here and your hair's all crunchy." And I was like,
Ooh,
and when I left, I was like, I'm supposed to go to these places and feel better about myself, not
yeah,
worse. And
yeah,
I left
right,
there feeling worse. And then this is
yeah,
the third thing. And then the third thing is I had been getting the relaxer, and I was having issues in my hair that I don't remember having when my mom was just doing the straightening,
right,
right, with the hot comb.
yeah,
I don't remember
yeah,
having the issues that I was having. So it was those three things
mm-hmm,
that made me decide not to use a relaxer. But so when you and I went natural, there wasn't a lot of information out there. So
no, there
and
wasn't,
professionals also weren't doing natural hair. So we were kind of
right,
left to our
right,
own devices, right? And we're lay
yeah,
people, and so now there has been a compilation of information through YouTube. We
mm-hmm,
call them the YouTube streets. So the YouTube streets,
yep,
had a lot of information about what you should be doing with your hair that may or may not actually be correct. And
right,
I don't
right,
think that what we should be doing with our hair is very different from what anybody else. And I think that's the misnomer is like, we've got this curly kinky hair that grows out of our scalps, and we think that we've got to beat it into submission. And
yes, yes, I
yeah.
love that. I mean, I'm just picturing that
Hmm.
analogy of just beat, and the other thing is that we have to beat it into
Right.
submission, and then when it is into submission, we have to keep it
And to
submissive.
keep and we still, and it's always with this, with the proximity to whiteness, is always
Whiteness,
in
yes,
and that's
yeah.
that's
And I want to
that's
even mention that when the
mm-hmm,
YouTubers first started coming out, and then even when with the natural hair
mm-hmm,
movement, the first hair was, and when we think about hair typing, it was more of what people would consider like the
mm-hmm,
3C,
mm-hmm.
4A hair. When we talk about the hair that is, because the hair typing, and I think it's
Something,
Andre.
I forgot his last name.
Uh, yeah, I can't remember his name. He was the
Mm-hmm.
Oprah's hairstylist, and
Yeah.
so he created this hair typing system, and it really was adopted by many, many, many in the natural hair community as well as other hair.
Mm-hmm.
And so even then, it was like um, you didn't have the tightly coiled
Mm-hmm.
hair that was represented. You had more of the hair that was more silky
Mm-hmm.
and more easy, the hair that was easier, or well, what people said was easier to maintain. It was
Mm-hmm.
closer, it's more and so I mentioned that because that's that
Mm-hmm.
approximation
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
whiteness. And so it really, now when you go to
Mm-hmm.
YouTube or you look at TikTok, you will see Black women with a variety of
Mm-hmm.
hair
Mm-hmm.
textures,
Yeah.
which I love and I think is just so
Mm-hmm.
important, because it's not only one specific type of
Mm-hmm.
hair.
Yeah.
You can see a
Yeah.
variety of hair,
And so, do
yeah,
you
which is
think
important.
that? So, I wonder. So, this episode is really about the hair reparations, right?
Yes.
And the reparations coming from manufacturers of these products that that turn out to be dangerous to our health. And in some ways, it has been sort of this unspoken theory, right? That it could be
Uh-huh.
dangerous. Now that it is dangerous, who do
Right.
we think? And like I said, I think, yeah, the manufacturers of these chemical straighteners, and with the idea behind, you know, the proximity to whiteness. We're willing to put dangerous chemicals onto our hair to make ourselves look white.
Right, because our natural hair is, quote, not good enough.
Yeah.
And so the question is, who, because we have all these lawsuits, so who is responsible? Right. And I love the title, Hair Reparations. So what would make people, because when you talk about reparations, that's about making people whole, or bringing them closer to wholeness, because they've been harmed, and so you want to make them whole. So what would that mean?
I mean, just even with these lawsuits, if you have, I think we can kind of segue into our call to action segment now, right? Because right. I think one of the things that women should take stock of is, have they been riddled with fibroids, right? Is there a medical connection to your fibroids? Talk to your doctor about this. Now this information is out now. This information is clear that that these chemical straighteners have contributed to, or can contribute to, these 3 types of cancer, as well as the fibroids, and affecting your body. So I think I think it would be worth your while to have a discussion with your doctor about it if you are suffering through something like this, and make sure you you can seek out these class action lawsuits, and you can become a part of it, and be compensated for the injury that you have sustained.
One other thing that I was thinking about is that I think this needs to be part of the assessment. When you go to the doctor, or even when children go to their pediatricians, pediatricians and doctors need to be asking, do you use hair straighteners? Does your child use hair straighteners? Because it's, we ask folks about using different chemicals, right? So we know now that hair straighteners are toxic. And so if we have parents coming in or folks coming in, maybe that should be part of the assessment. And so if it is, and I want to be clear, I'm not saying that I'm anti-hair straightening. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that if people want to straighten their hair, there are ways to do it besides putting chemical straighteners into your hair. There are different ways of doing it. And also, we talked about childhood the last time, right? We talked about, and I strongly feel that we need to avoid, whenever possible, putting chemicals in children's hair, because they're growing and they're still developing. Yeah. So I don't want people to write comments, Nicki is anti-straightening. That is not what I'm saying. I'm just saying.
But I think it's important to know the perspective, or the reason why you're straightening your hair. Like, are you straightening your hair because you feel like you have to, or are you straightening your hair because you want to, or you just want to do something different to your hair, as opposed to, my hair isn't good enough. And that's what's, to me, that's what's key. Okay, so I think that's going to be good to kind of get started with our final segment, the Tell Me Something Good segment.
Uh-oh. Something good.
We always want to give you something good. And I think really the something good has been pretty much what we've been already kind of talking about, in the sense that, people are going to pay. Essentially, the hair reparations is happening. It's a long process, right? This unrealistic and unreasonable indoctrination into whiteness, and how looking white is presentable as opposed to looking what's natural to you. I think, the means by which we are we've been indoctrinated to kind of get that look, or and to appear that way, is now backfiring, because it's causing a lot of injuries to Black women who have consistently used these products. So I think that's one of the, tell me something good. It's
Mm-hmm.
these lawsuits are happening, and it's real.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think the tell me something good is when we look around and we see folks in movies, even on commercials, in magazines,
Mm-hmm.
we are seeing more natural hair.
Mm-hmm.
On the catwalk, the
Mm-hmm.
runway,
Mm-hmm.
we're seeing more natural hair. And when I say natural hair, I mean we're seeing more natural hair that is not straightened,
Yeah.
but in its natural texture.
Texture. Exactly.
And I don't know if you've noticed, Kimmie, I've seen a lot of men or male identifying folks wearing their natural hair
Mm-hmm.
more like in afros,
Oh
but
yeah.
like with different textures and
Mm-hmm.
different people, braids and all
Mm-hmm.
kinds of things
Mm-hmm.
that even 20 years ago, people would have said, oh, that person
Yeah.
looks like they're
Yeah.
rough.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now people are really embracing it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so so I think that's just wonderful. I
I,
mean, I think embracing what comes from you naturally
mm-hmm.
is just amazing,
Mm-hmm.
because people are just beautiful
Mm-hmm.
and our characteristics are beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, to see so many folks shining just makes me feel really amazing.
Yes, and I think that is what makes all of it mean something. It's like the reason why we were willing to put ourselves through that process, because you remember, even when we would get relaxers, you remember it would burn, like it would
Yes.
physically burn.
Yeah.
And we were willing to put ourselves through that just so that
Yeah.
our hair would be permanently straight. Like straightening it with the straightening comb wasn't enough, right? Because you
Right.
could
Right.
get caught in the rain shower, and your hair would go back.
Go back.
Yeah, you could go. If you wanted to go swimming, you wouldn't go swimming, or if you
Right.
did, you felt like you just weren't presentable. Just all those things.
And that was something else that I saw about Black women and not participating in physical activities
Mm-hmm.
because of hair.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we were willing to do that. We were
Mm-hmm.
willing to we know that working out and just being active is good. And we're willing not to do that. And when I say we, I mean just
Yeah.
Black women as a whole. We're willing not to do that just
Mm-hmm.
because of our hair.
Yep. And so that's changing.
That's changing. That's
And
changing.
when we talk about natural hair, we kind of have to get into the weeds of it too, because, for a while, natural hair was like, okay, looser curl patterns, right? We
Yes.
were
Yes.
that first, not tightly curled hair like mine. Like, we're just now really starting to see more representations of my kind of hair.
Right.
And I just, I sent you that link of that beautiful young lady who was just promoted to her evening news or weekend anchor position,
Yes.
and she
With
actually
her
had
natural
hair
hair. Hair
in
to
a
fro.
puff.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, she
Yep.
had a puff, and so that was her picture for that news forecast, and so that news channel. So I thought that was fabulous, and I also think that the what's good is that now professionals are starting to get involved with learning and teaching us, because you and I talked about, in preparation for this episode, you had mentioned that the statistic about who still is using relaxers versus
Yes.
who is
Who
natural,
isn't?
and
Yeah.
a lot of it has to do with economics,
Mm-hmm.
because going natural, we believe that, oh, we have to try out everything.
Right.
So now
Right.
the manufacturers, okay, here they are again, they're jumping on that bandwagon.
Yeah.
We've got thousands of products. We've been taught that somehow products is what's going to make our hair do something. It's going to beat it into the submission that we want it to be in. So we still have a ways to go. But I think, one of the good things is that now more Black professionals are learning how to do natural hair, so that
Right.
they're taking the guesswork out of what we need to do to
Hmm.
maintain our hair.
And even people who are not Black or don't identify as Black.
Mhm.
I know that there are professionals out there that identify as other racial and ethnic groups, and they're talking about how when they go into like cosmetology classes,
Mhm.
that they are now being required
Mm.
to learn
Mhm.
how to take care of
Mm.
Black hair.
Mhm.
Whereas before that may have been here's the main curriculum.
Mhm.
And then, you can pick, learn how to work with Black hair.
Right.
But
It was an
now
elective. It was
it was an
elective. Yeah.
elective. It was an elective. But now people are really incorporating it into the true, because they understand
Mhm.
that, first of all, when we look at who spends money and who spends a lot of money, Black women spend a lot of money on hair care
Mhm.
products.
Yes.
And so people are really, so there is an economic incentive, okay,
Mhm.
for folks to learn how to do Black hair,
Mhm.
natural Black
Yeah.
hair.
Yeah.
So there is that incentive. And so I'm really hoping that folks are really learning how to appreciate it. In fact, I was watching some videos in about folks in Korea, because there's a population of folks who identify as Black who are living in Korea
Mhm.
right now.
Mhm.
And so if you go online, you'll hear folks talking about how they're interacting with folks to help folks understand uh, the value in working with Black hair.
Mm. Okay. Yeah.
And
Mhm.
so it was really interesting.
Mhm.
Preparing for this episode, I was watching a bunch of videos,
Mhm.
and how people were really fascinated by the hair, because a lot of folks had never touched Black hair
Mhm.
before, like physically touched it,
Yeah.
and they were just like, "Oh, look at
Yeah.
this."
Yeah.
And so just um to have people open enough
Mhm.
to allow folks,
Mhm.
that learning
Yeah.
experience, because sometimes, you don't know, when people want to touch hair, it has to have a good intent.
Yes.
They have to have good intent. They
Mhm.
can't just walk over and just grab your hair,
Yeah, and just
start
stuff. Yeah.
molesting your hair, just for the benefit of it, No molesting of the hair.
Well, Nikki, we can go on and on and on about this,
Yeah,
and I really feel like we have just scratched the surface of this
right,
topic.
right.
Which is why, not only did we do the last episode, but this episode, I don't know, we'll talk about whether or not we're going to have another one on hair, but we certainly could. There's, there's fodder for it. So I think this is a good ending point today for this
Absolutely,
episode.
absolutely,
And we look forward to seeing all of y'all back for our next
absolutely.
episode.
I noticed that you said y'all, you bringing in that Southern. We had to start with goo gobs, and now cross cultural, right?
Hilarious.
And I can't wait to share that with family,
Mhm.
because family will just crack up
Oh,
when
oh
they
yeah,
hear the
yeah,
word goo gobs in there.
yeah.
So
They're gonna crack up on
they're gonna
that.
crack up. They're gonna crack up.
All right. Well, it's been real. And until next time, don't forget to.
To like
Mm-hmm.
and to subscribe.
Yep. And until next
We
time.
definitely want you to subscribe. And also, if you have ideas for future episodes, please put them in the comments. We
Yes.
really love chatting, and we really want to explore some topics. And we want to hear what you want to hear about.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Sounds good.
absolutely.
Till next time.
Bye.
Bye.